6 years ago, I was involved in a drive-by shooting from one of my neighbors, and it completely transformed my life forever and never left me the same. So Taylor and I both got married 6 years ago, and when we got married was right when I was about to start medical school. And so I started medical school at USC, and obviously being newlyweds, we were living on like a serious budget, right? So we moved up to LA, and we knew moving up to LA, we wanted something that was not only affordable, but also safe for both of us. And we moved to a city that was notoriously really safe. And so the city that we have heard from, the reputation of the city, if I told you what the city was, you'd be like, yeah, that's a safe city. Little did we know there were some certain areas within the city, certain pockets. This is how it goes for a lot of cities, but we didn't know this about this city, certain areas within the city that were not as safe as the rest of the city. And so when we moved to LA and I started medical school, we moved to one of those notoriously not so safe areas within the city. And so we actually noticed that this area we moved to was not as safe as we had thought. A few weeks or a few months in, we were noticing some extracurricular activities, if you know what I mean. And so Taylor and I were like, all right, we gotta be super safe. We gotta be super careful being in this area because it's not something we're used to. For myself, I've been exposed to extracurricular activities, you know, being an EMT, like growing up, and that was my background before I even went to medical school in the first place. So I worked as an EMT, so I've seen a lot of things going up to this level, right? And so I've seen car accidents, I've seen people die, I've seen babies die, like I've seen a lot, I've been exposed to a lot up until this point. And so we knew like we had to have that level of awareness moving to the city. 2 months into me going to school, it was a Thursday night, and this was the night that completely changed everything for not only for our marriage, but also like for our perspective on the world. And so it was a Thursday night around 8:30 p.m. I'll never forget the day. And I was sitting there studying, getting ready for a test the next day. And Taylor's watching TV as I'm studying. And we hear what she thought was bottle rockets. And she's like, was that bottle rockets or fireworks? And she's never heard gunshots. I personally have heard gunshots multiple times in the past. And so we heard multiple pops that she thought were fireworks or bottle rockets. And I was like, no, I don't think that's fireworks. I don't think that's bottle rockets. I think that was literally a gunshot. And she's like, a gunshot? What do you mean? And then after that, we heard cars screeching and wheels, you know, a car like quickly speeding away. And obviously both of us went directly to the worst case scenario. We're like, oh my goodness, I think someone just got shot. And then after we hear the car screeching away, we then hear screeches and people screaming. We're like, this is real. This is happening right now. Like someone just got shot. Like, what are we gonna do? And I'm sitting there studying. And like I said before, I had worked as an EMT in the past. And so I had experience and I know what to do in these type of situations. But first instinct, you're like, it's not on me. I'm not gonna deal with this. I'm just gonna stay in the house and call 911, right? You're not gonna go out there and go see what's going on. It's gonna be dangerous. But I remember my wife looked at me in that moment. She's like, Trent, you have to do something. I'm like, what do you mean I have to do something? Like, I'm just gonna call 911. Like, that's what I'm gonna do, right? Like, I'm not gonna go out there and get involved. And she continued to look at me and she's like, Trent, you need to do something. You need to go out there. And the truth is, like, I knew that I could help, and I knew that, yes, I probably could do something, but I was afraid. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I didn't know what I was gonna walk into. I didn't know what was out there. I didn't know if there was still an active shooter out on the street. I didn't know if this person was literally like shot in the head or like something happened like very traumatic that I didn't want to see. I had fear going into there, even though I was equipped to be able to handle a situation like that. But she spoke it into me, and I remember in that moment, like, I'm like, I need to step up. I need to make this happen and go out there. And so I went out there literally terrified. I can't even tell you how scared I was going into that scene. So I walk out of the house, I walk around the block, literally 3 houses down. That's how close it was to it. And I see this man laying in the middle of the street with multiple people around him and just with multiple gunshots to his abdomen, to his stomach. And I'm like, hey, I can help. What do you guys need? Obviously no one there knew what to do. A lot of them were in shock and in panic, and they're like, he's been shot, what do we do? And I remember the first thing I did was I went up to him, I got some towels, I put pressure on his stomach, tried to help his stomach out, help the bleeding. And I remember I pretty much cared for him for about, I think it was about 4 to 5 minutes until the ambulance showed up. And, you know, praise God, he was able to survive after taking multiple gunshots to the stomach, and they ended up finding the guy, you know, a day later. But the amount of like gratitude and appreciation the family had for me after that moment was like really overwhelming. You know, I lived in the neighborhood. I had just moved in, and who knows what would have happened if I wouldn't have stepped in and taken action. And that moment, not only like the aftermath of that moment was really difficult because, like I said before, I had been exposed to things like that because I had worked as an EMT before. So it didn't, yes, it shook me up because it was in my own neighborhood, but really it shook up Taylor, my wife, even more, because she had never been exposed to anything like this. And it was a really, really difficult few months after that experience until we were actually able to feel comfortable in that neighborhood. And we moved out of the neighborhood once our year lease was up. We moved out as soon as we could. But there's really 3 key things that I took away from that moment that taught me about manhood. And I want to share with you the 3 things that I learned from having to step out of my comfort zone, step through my fear, and take action in that moment. The first thing is it's your responsibility to take action. It's your responsibility to take action. When the individual was shot laying in the street and I was well equipped to be able to handle that, then my first thought, my first instinct was not go out there and like save the day, right? It wasn't that at all. It was to call 911, which of course we did, but like I was afraid and I thought it was someone else's responsibility. And it took my wife having to like really call it out in me, like, Trent, this is your responsibility to take action. This is called bystander syndrome, where there's a bunch of people around and everyone points a finger like it's your responsibility, it's your responsibility, it's your responsibility. It is not someone else's responsibility to make a change. It's yours. It's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to change your family's generational line of health. It's your responsibility to get your family out of debt, to break the generational curse of money struggles in your family. It's your responsibility to change the trajectory of your life. Like, it's your responsibility. It's no one else's responsibility in what happens in your life. So often as men, we point the responsibility and we put the finger to someone else. It's on you, whether you like it or not. The outcomes that we have in life are on us. That was something I had to learn. I was well equipped to do something and I felt afraid. So I hesitated for a second and didn't do anything, but I stepped in anyways because it was my responsibility. The second thing is, how many people around you are struggling with things that you have no idea about? I moved into this neighborhood and I had no idea that there was gangs there. I had no idea that there was violence there. I had no idea that there was drugs there. I had no idea. I really didn't. But the thing that I learned from this moment was like, how many people do you encounter on a day-to-day basis that are struggling with something? This goes back to the responsibility factor. Like, it's your responsibility to lead by example. And I just think about the amount of people that I've crossed in my life that are struggling, that need what I have, that need what you have, right? People that are struggling with addictions, people that are struggling with their mindsets, people that are struggling with their body, people that are struggling with relationships. How many people do you encounter on a day-to-day basis that are struggling with things that you've actually overcome in your life? How many people? And then the third thing is, you can feel one way and act a completely different way. This might be the most important one. You can feel scared and still take action. You can be doubtful and still move forward. You can be unmotivated and still walk out in discipline. Just because you feel a certain way, like I felt in that moment, I felt scared, felt terrified, like I was literally shaking in my core about going outside of my door and what I could find. So I'd helping this individual that was laying in my street, my neighbor, shot with multiple gunshots to his abdomen. I was terrified. I still am thinking about it, like, if I'm being real. But I took action anyways. How many of us get stuck in our feelings and we allow our feelings to dictate our actions? We allow our feelings of wanting to sleep in dictate on what time we wake up. We allow our feelings and our cravings for food dictate what we actually eat. You could crave McDonald's and still eat a chicken salad. Like, just because you crave something doesn't mean you have to eat it. Just because you don't feel like working out doesn't mean you have to skip the gym. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean you have to act that way. I'm telling you, this changes everything. Stop allowing the way you feel to dictate how you live your life and the actions that you take, because oftentimes those feelings will always be there. If you're taking a risk and starting a side hustle or a business, you're going to feel afraid at times. A lot of the times I still have fear, I still have doubts in my business, but I take action anyways. When you start to work out, you start your fitness journey, you're still gonna crave old foods. I still crave ice cream, I still crave sweets. That doesn't mean I eat them. Stop expecting your feelings to change and and start expecting your actions to change. If you want to change your outcomes, you need to change your actions, not your feelings. Huge difference. Change the way that you act, not the way that you feel, and then eventually the way that you feel will align with the way that you act. And that's how your life's gonna change and the trajectory. So the 3 lessons I learned about manhood from seeing my neighbor get shot was, number 1, it's your responsibility to take action. You are the man that needs to step up and lead by example. Number 2, how many people around you are struggling with things that you've overcome or things that you need to overcome that actually needs your help. And then number 3, you can feel a certain way and still take action a certain way. I hope you got some value from today. If you did, let me know. Let's get it. I'll see you on the next training. Peace.